The casket was still wet from the rain when the lawyer grabbed David's arm and pulled him away from the family. Not politely, urgently. "Only you," he whispered. Then he pressed a brass key into David's hand so fast it almost felt stolen. No envelope, no explanation, just one sentence. "Your father made me swear not to tell your brother or your sister." Then the lawyer walked away before David could ask a single question. 20 feet behind him, Jack and Sarah were already arguing beside the hearse. Not about grief, about money. Who paid for the funeral? Who got stuck with the medical debt? Who wasted more years taking care of Richard Harlan before he died? They thought the old man died with almost nothing. That was the official story. Small checking account, old truck, half-collapsed house outside Bloomington. The kind of ending people expect from stubborn men who spent their whole lives pretending they didn't need anyone. David stood there staring at the key while rainwater rolled down his wrist. Heavy brass, old, scratched, and engraved on the side were 3 tiny numbers. For 19. That number hit something in his memory immediately. Not clearly, just enough to bother him. And that's when it shifted. Because suddenly David remembered being 10 years old, sitting beside his father in a pickup truck outside First National Trust Bank. His father parked across the street for almost an hour that day. Never went inside. Never explained why. Just sat there smoking in silence while staring at the building like it owed him something. David never forgot the look on his face. Now the same number from that building sat in his hand. Box 419. The real story started when David drove there the next morning instead of attending the will reading. At 51, David Harlan looked older than he should have. Years of construction work bent his shoulders forward. Divorce hollowed him out. 2 kids in college kept him permanently exhausted. He wasn't the successful son. That was Jack. Big house, sales executive, country club memberships. Sarah was the emotional one, church volunteer, constantly talking about family values while secretly borrowing money from everyone she knew. David was just there. The son who stayed close enough to help their father when things broke. Even after Richard made it difficult, especially after. The drive took 3 hours through cold Midwest farmland and towns that looked frozen in 1987. First National Trust no longer existed. The building had become a regional credit union years earlier. David almost turned around twice. The whole thing felt ridiculous. Then he showed the manager the key, and the woman behind the desk lost color in her face instantly. "Haven't seen one of these in years," she said quietly. She kept staring at the brass key like it shouldn't exist anymore. "Your father never closed the account." David felt his stomach tighten. "What account?" The woman didn't answer. She simply led him downstairs. The old vault still remained beneath the renovated building. Steel doors, cold air, original lockboxes lining the walls like graves. She stopped at one near the bottom. For 19. The key fit perfectly. David's hand actually shook turning it. Inside sat one thick envelope, a black notebook, and something wrapped in cloth. That was it. No gold bars, no stacks of cash, nothing dramatic. First, David opened the envelope casually, then stopped breathing. Stock certificates, treasury bonds, investment accounts dating back over 40 years. The numbers didn't fully register until the manager quietly said, "Sir, this is worth close to $2 million. David laughed once. Sharp, broken. His father reused paper towels, argued over $10 purchases, patched his boots with glue instead of replacing them. And all this time, he was secretly sitting on millions. David opened the letter next. The handwriting was unmistakable. "David, if you found this, it means I guessed right. Jack would have sold everything. Sarah would have cried over it while spending every cent. You stayed. Even when you hated me. This money belongs to you, not them. Do not tell your brother or sister. They will destroy each other trying to touch it. Dad. David read the letter 3 times, then looked at the black notebook. Something about it bothered him immediately, because Richard Harlan never kept journals, never wrote feelings down, never explained himself. But this notebook was full. Pages and pages, dates, addresses, names, and tucked halfway through the notebook, a photograph slid into David's lap. That was the moment everything changed. The photo was old, late 70s maybe. Richard looked younger than David had ever seen him, and smiling, actually smiling. Beside him stood a woman David didn't recognize. Pretty, dark hair, sundress, and between them, a little girl, maybe 6 years old, holding Richard's hand. On the back of the Polaroid, written in faded blue ink, Emily, 1977. She was never supposed to be mine. David felt cold immediately. No, impossible. His father had another child, another family, an entire hidden life. David drove home in complete silence. Halfway back, he pulled over beside a cornfield and threw up in the grass. Not because of the affair, because suddenly he realized the money wasn't hidden from strangers. It was hidden from them, his whole family. And if Richard lied about something this massive, what else existed? That night, David barely slept. At 3 a.m., he reopened the notebook. Most pages looked like financial records, but certain names repeated. Emily Carter, Indianapolis, monthly transfers, medical payments, school tuition. David's pulse sped up. His father had been supporting this girl for decades, quietly, secretly, consistently, while acting emotionally unavailable to his own children. None of it made sense. The real story started when David found Emily. Public records weren't hard to track if you knew where to look. 48 years old. Trailer park outside Indianapolis. Mother deceased. No marriage records. No children. Minimal income history. David sat outside her trailer nearly 40 minutes before knocking. Rainwater dripped from the roof while he stood there questioning every decision that brought him here. Then the door opened, and his stomach dropped instantly. She had Richard's eyes. Exactly. Same sharp stare. Same guarded expression. Even the same pause before speaking. "You look like him," she said quietly. No confusion. No denial. Like she'd been expecting this moment for years. David asked how much she knew. Emily laughed softly. "Enough to know he was my father. Not enough to know why he stayed away." Inside, the trailer was painfully clean. Cheap furniture. Medicine bottles lined beside the sink. A portable oxygen machine humming quietly in the corner. David noticed it immediately, then noticed how pale she looked. Too pale. Emily caught him staring. "Cancer," she said flatly. No drama. No self-pity. Same kind that killed him. David sat down slowly. Doctors gave her maybe 18 months. Maybe less. Insurance denied parts of treatment repeatedly. She'd been selling furniture piece by piece to stay afloat. Then she said something that hollowed David out completely. "He sent money every month after I turned 10. David blinked. "What? Cash? Different postmarks? Different envelopes? Never notes?" She smiled bitterly. Guess that was his version of parenting. David showed her the letter, the investment records, the inheritance, and Emily went completely silent. Not greedy, not emotional, just stunned. Then she whispered, "He left all of it to you?" David nodded slowly. There was just one problem. For the first time since finding the money, David didn't want it anymore. Not fully. Not after seeing where some of it should have gone. He drove home with half the transfer paperwork already prepared in his mind. But someone at the bank had talked, because Jack showed up at David's house before midnight. Sarah right behind him, and both looked feral. "You lying piece of garbage," Jack snapped before David even opened the screen door fully. Sarah was already crying. "Dad had money?" she shouted. "You knew." David realized instantly this was no longer about grief. This was survival. Everyone's real face had finally surfaced. Jack shoved him backward into the kitchen. "How much?" David stayed quiet. "Wrong move." Jack grabbed his shirt. "How much?" "Enough," David snapped back. Then Sarah saw the notebook on the table, and everything exploded. Within minutes, the entire secret came out. The money, the hidden daughter, the affair, Emily. Sarah slapped David hard enough to split his lip when he admitted he planned to give Emily part of the inheritance. "She's not family," Sarah screamed. Jack looked worse, cold, calculating. "That money belongs to us." David finally lost patience. "No," he shouted. "He gave it to me because I was the only one who stayed when there was nothing left to take." The room went dead silent, because everyone knew it was true. Jack visited when he needed favors. Sarah came around when bills stacked up. David came because the gutters needed fixing, because the furnace broke, because old men still needed groceries even when nobody loved them properly anymore. Jack threatened lawyers before leaving. Sarah called Emily a mistake. David sat alone in his kitchen until sunrise, realizing money had done exactly what Richard warned it would do: destroy them. 2 weeks later, David returned to the vault one last time. He transferred enough money to fully cover Emily's treatment privately, set up trusts for his own kids' futures, paid off debts he'd spent 20 years drowning under. Then he reopened the notebook for the final time. The last page was dated only 3 months before Richard died. "David, if you're reading this, you already met her. I wanted to. Truth is, I was ashamed. Not of her, of myself. You were the only one I thought might choose people over money. I needed to know at least one of my children still could. The money was never the inheritance. The choice was, burn this notebook after reading. Some things should stay buried." David closed the notebook slowly, then laughed through tears for the first time in years. Because even dead, Richard Harlan was still testing people. 6 months later, David stood alone at his father's grave. Cold wind, no flowers, no speeches. Jack and Sarah still refused to speak to him. Emily's treatments were working better than expected. For now, David pulled the brass key from his coat pocket one final time. For 19. Such a small thing to carry this much damage. He dropped it into the wet dirt beside the headstone and pressed it down with his boot. The money changed everything, but not the way people imagine money changes things. It didn't heal the family, didn't create peace, didn't erase what Richard hid. It simply exposed everyone more clearly than before. Especially Richard, because somewhere between the lies, the secrecy, the hidden accounts, and the years of silence, the old man had still tried to do one decent thing before dying, just badly. David stared at the grave a long time before turning away. Behind him, the key stayed buried where it belonged, but the notebook remained tucked safely inside his coat, because some inheritances aren't meant to be spent, just carried.